Well, friends, let's begin. Welcome everybody. I'm so glad to see you all here. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm the host, cat herder, and creator of the Future Trends Forum. We are just starting today with an unusual meeting, and I'm really glad to see all of you here. Before we begin, let me introduce the forum, where it comes from, how it works, and where it's headed. So to begin with, you should all know that the Future Trends Forum is the discussion video-based spinoff from the Future Trends in Technology and Education report. If you haven't seen that, FTTE is a monthly trends analysis that's been going on for some years. We track upwards of 83 trends impacting the future of education. This is all evidence-based. This is all grounded in research. Every report is about 50% footnotes, so you can track down every data that we have. We've been doing this longitudinally, so we can extrapolate ahead to get a better handle on what might be happening in education in the future. You go to FTTE US to find that more. Now, the other thing you should know, here, let's go to the next slide, please. The other thing you should know is that the forum is part of my overall project of the future of education. So if you go to futureofeducation.us, you can find what I call the Future of Education Observatory. It has links to the FTT report, this forum, our book club, my blog, upcoming podcast, upcoming bookstore, and more information. Now, beyond that, you should also know that this is a very, very international event. And some of you in the chat box have already seen this because we have participants not only from across the United States, but also people from the Middle East and North Africa. If we're talking about the future of education, and in particular, if we're talking about the future of the new Media Consortium, it's very, very important to have as transnational perspective as possible. Now, we can only do this work with the support of some very generous sponsors, and I want to thank them right now. The first is NYSERDNet from New York State. This is a nonprofit that works to get that state's colleges, universities, museums, and libraries on broadband. They do great work, and we're very grateful to them for their support. We're also grateful to Shindig, because Shindig makes available this technology that we're using right now. So if you haven't used this before, or if you haven't used it for a while, let me just walk you through a few of the key points. This is a discussion-based tool. What I'm doing right now, talking at you with some PowerPoint, is going to stop in a minute. The purpose of this is conversation. And so we have several tools to facilitate that conversation. Look down at the bottom of the screen. Let me point out three of these. There's a white strip that runs along the bottom. On the very left side is a little number. Right now it's 48 and has some human silhouettes. That's a list of everybody who's here. So if you click that, you'll get a chance to see all these different people that are here. So you can see Holly Littgate, Brenda, John Idelson, Stephen Long, Phil Long, Dave Hooker, Lisa Gustinelli, all these people. And you can connect with them as you like. Now, if you'd like to talk with them privately, it's very easy. You just click on their icon. And if they want to talk to you, your two icons will click together like Lego bricks. You'll have your own private audiovisual bubble. So you can also move a little bit to the right of that icon. You'll see what is a kind of cartoon dialogue box. That's a click to the chat box. And every group of 18 or so people who are here have their own private chat box. So right now you can see people like Mark Corbett Wilson, Paul Signorelli, Vanessa Vale, Alexandra Pickett, all chatting right now about the weather if they're in the North Country. You can use that to pose questions and ask questions and make reflections. Now, to the left of that, or I'm sorry, to the right of that button on the white strip, there's a question mark with a circle around that. If you have a question or a comment you'd like to make, click that button. You can type in your notes, and we'll flash it on the screen, and I'll read it out loud. And that's a really good way to get your question, comment in front of everybody. Now, best of all, if your camera is working and your microphone is working, simply click the raised hand icon in the middle of that strip. That tells you when to join us on stage. So in about 30 seconds, we'll beam you up and you can join us here. So as long as your mic is working, your camera is working, and you're in a place where you can talk, please do that. So these are some of the ways that we can communicate. I want to encourage you to try all of them. We're grateful to Shindig for their support. We're also grateful to dozens of people on Patreon who have been supporting my work over the past year. If you don't know Patreon, it's a crowdfunding site like GoFundMe or Kickstarter, and it's devoted to people who are creative, people who are making stuff. So people sign up to do monthly contributions. For as little as $1 a month, you can help keep the lights on and keep events like the forum going. So if you haven't had a chance to, join the dozens of other people at www.patreon.com/Brian Alexander, and we're grateful to you for your support. We're very grateful to the people there. Now, we have to proceed and explain what we're talking about today. So, we're talking about this enormous event happening with the new Media Consortium. So let me give you a little bit of background on that. Here at the Future Transform, our focus is on the future of education, with a special emphasis on technology. In order to do this, we talk with people representing organizations of all kinds, either startup founders, university president, technology creators, association leaders, scholars, journalists, critics, evangelists, and they represent all kinds of organizations, from individual libraries to interesting associations to governments. And all those organizations play a key role in shaping the future of education. One of those organizations has been, until recently, the New Media Consortium, or NMC. Founded in the 1990s, this membership association has helped connect people with technology, especially emerging technology, with an emphasis on creativity and innovation. They've done a lot of different projects, including annual conference, the widely read Horizon Report, and more. And they were going great guns up until a week ago. And when they stopped with a very, very sudden announcement. And I'll just read part of that to you. This announcement stunned and shocked quite a few people. Here's the announcement. The New Media Consortium regrets to announce that because of apparent errors and omissions by its former controller and chief financial officer, the organization finds itself insolvent. Consequently, NMC must cease operations immediately. NMC will be promptly commencing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy case. So, that's the shocking event that's happened over the past week, over the holiday. NMC closed, all the staff have been laid off, legal procedure is underway. What I'd like to do here for this next hour is for us to explore the future of NMC and everything around it. The people who have helped make it possible, the people in the network around it, the great projects they've done, including the Horizon Report. I'd like to ask us all to brainstorm and create and innovate very much in the spirit of the late NMC. Now, in order to do this, there are a lot of people here with a wide range of perspectives and experience. I see in the crowd former NMC staff, NMC board members, as well as people who've just been part of the NMC community as contributors, as members. I'd like you to, all of you, to begin first by thinking about what does the NMC mean to you? What has it stood for? What have you gotten out of it? What have you given to it? So before we get to the future, let's just start by saying, what does it mean to you? Now, you'll see to one side of me on the screen, two boxes just appeared. They're teal colored and they have join podium. So if you want to join us up on the stage, simply click that button and you'll be teleported there automatically, which is really easy to do. If you haven't done it, it takes less time than it did for me to describe it. So let's talk about this first. What does NMC mean for you? What has it meant? And if you want, use the chat box. Click the question mark so that I can throw something on stage or on the screen, or join us up on stage to talk. And please know that if you're new to the forum, that this is a very welcoming, very supportive environment. We're grateful for everyone's perspective. If you feel shy or nervous, please don't. We're all glad for you to be here, and we're glad for anything you can say. So on the, we have Filese Banner joining us.
Hey, Brian, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly, Filese. Are you in frozen upstate New York?
I'm in frozen upstate New York. I've moved my office upstairs. It's nice and warm upstairs, so I've got a little flowery stuff behind me, not set up yet. But I want to thank you for, yeah, I want to thank you for hosting this. And just, I have relied so heavily on the Horizon reports, and I do a lot of work with faculty development, and I do a lot of work in with educational technology. And the Horizon report for me has always been the proof in the pudding almost, right? So that it's more than just me, Filese Banner coming to you saying, this is where you should be looking, but see what's on the horizon, see what's there. And it's great to to start a discussion. So I've relied so heavily on the Horizon reports since they first came out. So
Wow,
yeah.
Thank you very much. And you've experienced that through multiple institutions, right? Including your own,
Yeah.
Media Consortium.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please stick around up here on stage just for a minute more. We've got some more on the chat box. And again, finally, did you click the join podium, or did you? Pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you. That means a lot. The professional development angle is really, really important. In the chat box, we've had a few comments. Paul Signorelli, a former forum guest from San Francisco, said that NMC has stood for community, collaboration, innovation, and connections in our EdTech learning environment.
Yeah.
Keith Landa has seconded you, Faiz, by saying that he's mostly aware of NMC through the Horizon reports. Kate Borowski, from another frozen part of the United States, has said creativity, emphasizing that again, along with everything Paul said. And then Lisa Gustinelli says that, or Lisa, excuse me, as an NMC K-12 ambassador, gives a chance to share ideas with like-minded professionals in the field. It's a place where I can always talk about creative, innovative ideas, not always understood by the education community. Excellent, Lisa. Thank you so much. I just want to, just as a shout out, I want to thank Lisa and Paul, who have done so much work to help us communicate and share information in this past week. And speaking of people who've done so much, hello, Maya.
Hi, Brian.
Welcome. Are you home?
No, actually, I'm still in DC. Trying to have a little bit of a holiday here and joining in from a hotel room. But I think this is a pretty important conversation to be had. So thank you so much for facilitating. And I just wanted to chime in addition to, what we just said, to say that for me, the NMC, in addition to, being a great resource, was a place to participating in the Horizon Report and participating in the conference, and for me, delivering 4 or 5 minutes of fame to crystallize ideas. And I think things that basically not only, kind of push my own thinking further to crystallize these ideas and share with the community. So it was this place, where I think, was really sparking sort of new ideas and thinking, and being able to meet and share and bounce off ideas, and also push us further as in our own work and practice. And I see Sam and Michelle and Alex, and it's so good to see you guys.
Oh, it's fantastic to see them. Maya, please stay there as long as you can. I mean, hotel internet is not always the best.
So far, so good. Right.
I just want to second what you said, amplify that, and connect back to what people have been saying. Ideas seem to be important. That NMC is a crucial spot for ideas. And as you said, it's a place for ideas to be showcased, to be challenged, and to be developed. I think what Lisa said is really important as well. The complement of that is that these are ideas that are not, not always understood by the educational community. I mean, that's an important aspect. We talk about innovation, that this is a space for really pushing the envelope for what can be done. This is, as you can see from the people who are here, this is a networking space. The NMC is one place for people to communicate and connect. Lisa mentioned K-12. We have people here from the museum space, from the library space, from post-secondary education. And again, that theme of creativity being so strong. That NMC is about fostering creativity. This is good. Does this make sense to you all? Is this your sense of NMC? Is there anything more that you want to add to it? Is there more about NMC or anything particular? Do you have individual stories that you want to share? Again, you can just click the join podium to be up here with Maya, myself, and whoever else comes up, or use the chat box, or click the ask button to put something up there. And while you're thinking about that, in my chat room, Anthony Clemens has this great comment. As a curricular development manager, not pedagogical, curricular, reports have given him understanding what's emerging so he can provide his clients some suggestions as they determine how to move forward in determining what technological artifacts to learn. Then he adds, as an educational researcher, it lends credibility to his research and provides him with well-researched knowledge. Thank you, Anthony. It's really, really important to see that these ideas include the production of research and knowledge.
Yeah, I want to.
Oh, please go ahead, Maya. Please.
Yeah, I was just thinking also, the Idea Lab was one of the places where tried, Emery, Craig, and I did wearable technology like 5 years ago and brought beacons, and where we tried Google Glass. So where we just, pioneered and tried so many things, along with so many other colleagues who brought, 3D printers and sort of so many other experiences for all of us to play with and think about the future of education.
That's a good point. The Idea Lab, yes, that's really, really important. Lisa mentions Tommy the Now robot, which I don't know, but I'm sure she'll explain.
Yeah, I remember Lisa bringing the robot. I actually very much remember her and a student getting up on stage, and sort of demonstrating some of the students' kind of programming skills. It was very, very nice to see also the student starting to participate in some of these events, which brought a whole nother, I think, way for us to understand what we do and how we can move forward.
That's a great point. This connects back to what Philese was saying, where we have professional development being a crucial function. And on the one hand, as Anthony was saying, we have professional development for one's clients, where you're helping whoever you work with better understand technology in the future. But also, as you say, Maya, this is for oneself, where people get to test out new ideas and showcase them themselves, and they get to really develop themselves professionally. I guess Tommy has a fan base here, according to my chat box right now. Lisa Holloway has this pan. She says the most prestigious technology forward-thinking organization in the world. She said, goes on, I was lucky enough to work with and for some of the most amazing coworkers. Well said, Lisa. Well said. And then Karen, I won't get this name, Berliner, says the 5 minutes of fame format was very collegial and acknowledged success among peers in a broad, inclusive way. I, quote, borrowed the idea in my campus. Yes, so if you haven't seen it, that was the annual conference where you have a chance to speak for 5 minutes. And people timed their presentation to cram it as much as possible. Jared Bendis would actually do this non-stop talk for 4 minutes and 59 seconds right to the end in costume. Thank you, Karen. Forgive me if I mangled your name. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you. Well, this is a lot of love for an organization which the Wikipedia entry now lists in the past tense. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the reason this is in the past tense is because NMC is proceeding with Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is for reorganization, but trying to start again. Chapter 7 is for liquidation. And just, maybe this is a transition. What happened? What happened to NMC? What do you know? What do you think happened? What brought about this crisis? Again, if I can go back to the official announcement, it specifies financial problems using the language of errors and omissions. Is this what we know? Do you have any other insight? Is there any other way we can pull more information as we go? That might just clear the room of all conversation. I don't want to do that. I just want to make sure people feel comfortable. Excellent. So glad to see Gardner Campbell here. If you don't know Gardner is a guest of the Future Transform, a longtime friend. And Gardner, if I get this wrong, you are the official spokesperson for the NMC right now?
No.
What is it? What is your title?
While there was a new Media Consortium, I was, since June of 2017, the chair of the board of directors. When our petition for bankruptcy was accepted and a trustee was appointed, I assumed the role of responsible individual. And basically that means I am the contact with the former entity, the New Media Consortium, serving for the trustee, for counsel who's assisting us as a person who will be an information point, a coordinator of efforts to wind the process up in an orderly fashion.
Well, Gardner, first of all, I'm really, really glad you're here. Um, I believe tomorrow is your birthday, and I wanted to wish you well. And I hope I have the schedule right. And I'm sorry that I have to celebrate by bringing you up to talk as a responsible individual. I'm really glad you're here, and I thank you for answering all my emails because I've been besieging you with them. Is there anything that you could add to the account that we've had so far? Either to the account of what happened or to the great love shown by so many people for the NMC's work?
Well, I'll start with the second one. That love is humbling, it's inspiring, just as it always has been. I became active in the NMC in 2006. I did my first presentation at a regional conference in San Antonio, Texas. I joined the board of directors the first time in 2009 and served through March of 2012 when I resigned from the board. And that was a tremendous and also a challenging leadership experience. While I have been in these various positions of leadership within the NMC organization, I've also been an active participant and very grateful to be able to do both things. I think one of the hallmarks of NMC leadership has been that it is administrative, but also very much devoted to being practitioners within the community that we served. It was a way mission, a way that I took and delighted in. So even when I was not on the board of directors, I did continue to participate in the NMC. I think I missed one conference, but the rest of them I was there. If I was there, I was presenting, interacting with the community. Rejoined the board of directors in 2016, June 2016, at the conference that was somewhere. It'll come back to me soon. Rochester, of course. And then I led the search committee, which hired our new executive director, Dr. Eden Dahlstrom. And then in June of 2017, I was elected chair of the board of directors and served in that position until our bankruptcy petition was accepted, which, it all kind of runs together. But I think that was so last week, right? This has all happened very, very quickly. You'll understand that there are many things that I cannot talk about, some things I should not talk about. But I'm pleased to be here today simply to answer any specific questions that I can. I would simply underscore that this happened very suddenly. It was nobody's first, second, third of a way to go forward. As Brian has already mentioned, Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which I now know more about than I would have guessed 2.5 weeks ago, is an orderly path to do an inventory and valuation of the organization's assets and then sell those assets to be able to satisfy debt. That was the course we were advised to take. When the insolvency appeared, it appeared very suddenly and it was catastrophic. So that's why that happened. And that is what happened. And I would say, again, for emphasis, the love that I hear from people is a love that every single person on the board of directors shares. It is a love that has been a very vital part of the staff's work. It really has been a labor of love for all of us. And that, of course, as with the death of any loved one, when the organization died, that was a terrible and grief-stricken moment for us. I was, of course, in the room, ironically, at the Computer History Museum when on December 14th, we signed a set of documents that said, the board finds the following things to be true. Therefore, we are instructing our counsel, Reno Fernandez of McDonald Fernandez, a bankruptcy firm that specializes in nonprofit bankruptcy, and they have an office in Modesto and an office in San Francisco. We instruct them as a board of directors to take this action on our behalf. Once that was executed as a document, The next thing that happened was the entire board of directors resigns, having appointed me to be responsible individual moving forward. So while there are a few other details in there, I would say that that was the moment when essentially the NMC was over. And I can tell you that being in that room was an overpowering experience, certainly because of the pain we all felt, but because we are keenly aware of this community. We are in this community. We are part of this community. And we knew that the community would grieve for this. We knew that there would soon be, in addition to the pain the staff and the board were feeling, there would soon be an entire community with, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, a kind of confused anguish over this. How could this have happened? What will happen to this community? What will happen to our energies? What will happen to the love we feel for the work we do? Those are, of course, open questions. But the question of what happens to the new Media Consortium is not an open question. We are in bankruptcy, and it's an orderly proceeding that gives a trustee appointed by the court an opportunity to gather and evaluate the assets, material assets, physical assets, as well as intellectual property assets, and then sell them to recover funds to be able to pay our creditors. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions. I have tended to grieve more in private than in public, because when I'm in public, I'm typically trying to answer questions or keep the process moving. And by keeping the process moving, that has entailed, not just for me, but for some other people as well. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say 12-hour days since the potential for insolvency first came to light, which was really around the 5th and 6th of December. This all happened very, very quickly. And I think that's part of why our attorney said, you just don't have any runway. You need to act quickly to be able to protect what is left of the organization. So happy to take questions and contribute in any way that would be helpful.
Gardner, let me begin by thanking you for coming here and joining us to do that. And let me thank you also for sharing the story of how that happened, and also the story of your involvement with NMC. We really respect that and respect your feelings. As a responsible individual, let me then ask people for questions for Gardner. And before I can even finish that sentence, there are two. First in the chat box, Gardner, comes one from Lisa Gustinelli, who wants to know who wrote the statement sent in email.
That statement was essentially a statement by committee that was reviewed by counsel, who essentially, we're not experts in this. I'm an English professor. I'm a pretty good writer. I would have chosen probably longer sentences and a little more of a kind of a sense of emotion in it. But that's probably unwise. It works great when we're studying Milton. It's not so great when you're trying to communicate things of a very delicate legal matter. So in the end, I would say that it was a draft by the board, subject to review and some extensive modification by counsel. And it was the language that I carried with me from our meeting in the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California, all the way through to the embedding in MailChimp through some expert tutelage. I won't single out my teacher by name unless that teacher would like to self-identify, but the instructions were great. I would ask this person for directions to any place in the continental US at least. The instructions were great. It was a great walkthrough, and I copied and pasted the text into MailChimp and hit send just around 4 o'clock Eastern time on Monday, now just Monday, not quite 2 weeks ago. Or I guess, yeah,
Six.
that's right. Yeah, not quite 2 weeks ago on the, what was it, the 15th? Is that right? No, I see. I really, I will say this again. This is all
On the 18th.
happening so very quickly. Yeah, on the 18th. So good. Thank you.
It's a long December. Lisa, thank you for the question. She has a follow-up question which we'll come back to, but Phil Long from the University of Texas Austin has a question. Christopher, if you could just flash the screen, thank you. The NMC was never self-supporting for membership fees in the conference. It always subsisted via grants and other external funding. Was there a drop-off of those funding sources? Good practical question, Phil.
Phil and I have known
each
other. No, that's fine.
Can I give you a minute to think about it, or are you?
No, I'm ready to speak if that's okay with you.
Good. Good.
Phil and I have known each other a long time, so he'll understand when I say, well, that's a complicated question. It would seem to be an easy one. We had what I would call three primary sources of revenue. One was the conference. Phil's correct. That was never a big moneymaker. There are other organizations for whom the conference is a huge moneymaker, but that was not the case for us. Could it have been? I don't know. Maybe. Our priorities tended to be programmatic for members, and also, we always had significant sources of foundation funding. It is difficult for me to say what dried up, except in the most general terms. I would encourage people to read the press release. It was very specific. Apparent errors and omissions committed by the chief financial officer and controller. And those are the same person. Those were simply two titles that this person used or was known by during this person's work for NMC. Apparent errors and omissions simply means we got to a certain point, and because of what appear to be errors and omissions by the person who was in charge of the finances, we knew how much money was in the bank at a given point because we could go online and see it, and that's what we knew. So, I'm not sure how to answer that question other than to say what I've just said. You could look, it's a matter of public record, and you will see that we had a very large grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It was over $3 million. Grant's probably the wrong word. They used that word, but actually it was a kind of fee-for-service arrangement. There was not really a PI to my knowledge, but it was grant-like in that we had overhead expenses built in and so forth. We achieved all the deliverables for that grant. So I'm pleased we were able to do that, and we had some really fantastic people working with us on that grant. We also have membership dues as a very of our revenues, and we do not have the accuracy of records we would like or expect to have to be able to answer the question about sources of money any more fully than I just have. And when I say that, I say something that appeared very quickly and shocked everyone. And that's why the press release is written the way it is.
Thank you for that answer, Gardner. If you're new to the Future Transform, friends, you'll see that we are just transitioning from two different communication methods. Phil asked a question via the text question, and now he's joining us via video from the floor of his house, which is being evacuated right now, it looks like.
How you doing? And I wanted to just say I appreciate Gardner's response, and want everybody in the community to know that if there's one place that would be difficult to be right now is at the point where an organization is finding itself where the NMC is and be sitting there on the board. And that is something I have tremendous empathy and concern about for the board members and for the staff that have been summarily affected because there's terrific staff in the NMC. And the suddenness of this has got to be particularly challenging at this time of year. difficult conversation to have, the legality process of working through the obligations and also responsibilities, shall we say, for the management of the funding. The 1090s, which are, as Gardner noted, are publicly accessible and available, which are the forms you fill for a nonprofit.
I believe those are 990s.
Excuse me, 990s. Correct.
990s.
Correct. 990s. That's right. But they're there, and they show the roughly $250,000 or so. I think that's in the deficit side of things over the last 18 months. And so it does beg the question of the controller's responsibilities and the like to alert people as to the performance of the organization and steps that might or might not be able to be taken. And I suspect that's a very legally fraught conversation. But I just wanted to say, I think there is tremendous energy in the group. It's an opportunity for rethinking the spirit that the NMC represented. And the question really is how to proceed and harness that without damaging or otherwise negatively impinging on the legal processes that the termination of the NMC as an entity legally require. Because I've seen conversations about, well, let's get the Horizons report going on a third-party way, and at the same time, the Horizon report represents potentially an asset that has value to a third party that might want to buy it, and the NMC certainly is the owner of it, despite it is a Creative Commons licensed produced work, but that doesn't mean that the ownership has been taken out of the hands of the NMC itself. They do own it, and therefore what they do with it is up to them to decide. So the question really is that I'm curious about, maybe Gardner, you can give us some guidance as to be the thing community to move things that the NMC cherished forward, and at the same time not be detrimental or otherwise unduly complicating to the existing circumstances.
Question. Gardner, you want to take a whack at it?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that in the nonprofit world, as I understand it, we're a charitable organization, and we welcome people who are enthusiastic about carrying the mission forward. That's something that is part of my role as a responsible individual, since I know the community, I know the general area, to help alert the trustee to people who are interested in carrying on aspects of this work, a similar mission. I have done that. People are also welcome to contact the trustee directly. The trustee is very interested in knowing who might want to buy NMC assets. That's how she's going to be able to raise the money to be able to settle any outstanding debt. I wish I could tell you with some reliability or accuracy the extent of our debt. I can't. We don't have reliable information. That's part of what you'll hear me say it again and again. One of the things, speaking personally now, it took me at least a couple of days to wrap my head around, is that all of the Hail Marys, all of the, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? They all required a kind of baseline. People wanted to know, how much money are we talking about? How much debt are we talking about? And we did not have reliable financial information, despite the fact that we had been assured it was reliable financial information. That's why we say apparent errors and omissions. So at this point, interest in the mission of NMC, including carrying forward the work of the organization, which of course includes both the Horizon reports and what I like to say is the superset, which is the Horizon project, which is an earlier speaker said, it's not just me. We actually have some expert judgment that we can point to underscore what we're saying to our leadership in our own institutions. So that attention is welcome. What at the same time, interest in that is different from what I would call attempts to be in that process at this point. I understand that's complicated because of the time-sensitive nature of the Horizon report, though I do note that the plan this year, as I understand it, was to unveil the Horizon report at South by Southwest EDU in March. So we had a little extra time from the usual unveiling at ELI. This is my understanding. I could be incorrect about that, but that's what I understand. So time-sensitive nature to this. The 2018 Horizon report will not have the same value in August that it would in March. I understand that. But I would caution all of us from inserting ourselves into the process of the Horizon project as distinct from making clear to the trustee of our interest in, and if you can make the case you're especially positioned for it, to carry that work forward. So that's the distinction I would make. And it's a distinction between trying to own and carry forward the process right now. And own is a big word. I don't mean anybody is necessarily trying to grab it, but I mean trying to steer it, trying to lead it right now. I don't think that's appropriate. I do think it is entirely appropriate to make the case to me. I'll pass it along to the trustee or be in touch with the trustee directly, as I know people have been, to say, look, here I am. Here's what I do. Here's why I'm particularly well suited to take this work forward. I hope you will keep me in mind as you liquidate these assets. I will also add that the NMC's counsel has emphasized to me that nonprofits have a kind of a special aspect to the bidding process. Typically, the trustee is simply going to go for the highest bidder. That's the way it is. But that's not necessarily true when a nonprofit's assets are being liquidated, because the mission matters. The mission is one to serve the public good. That's what makes us tax exempt. So if an organization or a person or a group of people or whatever is aligned with the mission, they don't necessarily have to have the highest bid. But I would emphasize that it would behoove you to be in the process of asking to be considered, not in the process of taking Horizon 2018 forward yourself, until or unless the trustee says, go for it. That's what I understand from counsel and from the trustee.
So you're recommending pitching to the trustee rather than starting up outside the process?
Well, you see, this is the interesting part, which I'm sure somebody will write a lot about at some point. I will have my part of the story to tell at some point. What is the Horizon project? Well, it's the Delphi method. Probably, mostly, we say it is. Okay, we know what that is. And it's a kind of a crowdsourced expert judgment methodology. Okay. Who do those judgments belong to? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. It's interesting. They are eventually put into production and distributed by the new Media Consortium. And there's a lot of intellectual property associated with everything from the platform it's done on to specific aspects of the methodology and so forth. But for those people on the expert panel, and I've been privileged to be on that expert panel a couple of times, it's more like what you do when you're peer reviewing a scholarly article. I do that as professional service. I never get paid for it, although Duquesne or MIT or whoever at Johns Hopkins, I mean, they derive material benefit from my work. What I get is acknowledgement. I get something to put on my faculty annual activity report. Those are not small things. Those are big things. But I don't receive, unless I have a specific contract as an author or an editor with a press, I don't receive any, direct tangible benefit.
No, that's how peer review works.
That's how peer review works. So there's a way in which the expert panel's work is sort of like peer review. The question then becomes, do people derive value from the NMC's stewardship of that process, of the publication, the production, a large part of the writing, the distribution, and historically, and I have neglected to mention, and my apologies, I know Malcolm Brown has been here earlier, I should hasten to add, we have always done this in partnership with the EDUCAUSE Learning Initiative. So people seem to have derived a lot of benefit from that. And that's part of what has enabled this process to be ongoing. At any time, anyone could have said, I'm going to start up something just like what NMC does with Horizon, and I'll call it Voyager or whatever. And there's no law in the land that would keep you from doing that. That would have been fine. But people typically find that when somebody has a well-articulated plan, when things get out, when a certain reputational value begins to be established, that it is wise to align yourself with that, unless you feel so dissatisfied that you want to start up a new process.
Gardner, I'm conscious of time, both your own and also the sessions clock. And I think that's a very, very good answer to a series of questions, as well as very, very clearly expressed advice. We've had questions, a few specific questions about things like the website. And let's just quickly ask, Paul Baldridge wants to know, the NMC.org website is still operational and nowhere on the site is communication with said events. Is this normal? Just a quick question, probably needs a quick answer.
Well, I don't know what normal is, so I couldn't answer that question. I can tell you that I have asked that question myself of counsel. And counsel advised me that going forward, until the trustee says so, we should not put the press release up on the website. I am sorry for that. At first, as you can imagine, people thought that this was the result of hacking, that it wasn't real. And I continue to get email and telephone calls from people who just don't know. We very much wanted everybody to learn this in a way that would also not be disruptive of something the trustee would view as a potential asset. So that made this a little more difficult. And as I understand it, until I hear differently from the trustee, the website is the way it is, and that's how it must be.
Good question, Paul, and thank you for the typically thoughtful answer, Gardner. Let's direct questions a little bit ahead, and let's think about where this could all go. We've had questions and comments, so by where this all goes, I mean, what happens to the NMC community? We had a beautiful note in the chat from Paul Signorelli, who says that one of the great resources here cannot be sold, the community itself, that did so much to produce information that provides value. Then he asks, time to look forward to the benefit of the community and those it serves. So let's ask, this is the future transform. Where could this all go? I mean, and this is for everybody to think about. Do you think that we will see, for example, as Gardner described, a Voyager project or some other name, some other entity that takes up the Horizon idea, makes it its own, does something new? What happens to the community of people around this, the people who express so much love and admiration again? What happens to the different other projects and ideas? And what would you like to see? I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot to answer that, Gordon, because it's not as a responsible individual. That's not your role. If you'd like to chime in, please do. But let's see what I want to say. The quick question we have is from Tom Ames, who asks, "What is the likely timeline for bringing this to resolution? That impacts where it can go." Good question, Tom. When I spoke to the lawyer, he said that the trustee has basically as much time as she likes, days, months, or years. Gardner, can you amplify that?
Yeah, the timeline, as I understand it, is not terribly long. The clock is basically generated by the amount of time creditors have to file a claim. I don't know off the top of my head what that timeline is, but it's, my guess is that creditors have a fairly short window to say we're owed money by this entity, and we would like to get that back. So we're not talking years. We're talking, as I understand it, 2 or 3 months. I could not be exactly right about that. I do want to speak to something that's coming up in the chat, if that's okay, Brian. Could I say something about this?
Hang on one second, just one, because we had a quick question from Lisa. This should be an easy one for you. I think you may have addressed this already. She asked, "Is the Horizon project a name that can no longer be used?"
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. And I think, Chris, do we have any more questions in the text? And again, everybody else, if you want to join us on stage, you saw how easy it was. Simply to click the join podium button. We have a question from Mark Wilson, Mark Wilson, who wants to know, was fraud committed, and will charges be fired? Will charges be filed? Excuse me.
As I understand it, the trustee and the what I believe to be the court attorney who's working with her will examine the records very carefully. There's a meeting called a 341 meeting where I will go and I will be sworn in, and I think creditors can be there. I'll have benefit of counsel as well, and there will be specific questions asked. There are also a number of questions that I've been answering since the trustee was appointed, which I think was just last Thursday, so about a week ago. I can't speak to any matters of fraud or embezzlement right now. I have no evidence and no ability or wish to speak to any of that. That's going to be determined by the courts. So can't answer that question. That's another reason why the press release was worded the way it was. We know there were apparent errors and omissions. We know where those apparent errors and omissions showed up in terms of staff duties, and that's what we know. More, I anticipate coming to light, but I couldn't tell you what direction that's going to go in. But it's a reasonable question.
Mark is a very direct and powerful thinker. Gardner, you were going to speak to something in one of the chat boxes.
Yeah, there's a general chat going on, and
not exactly. Just for everybody involved. There are individual chat boxes for groups of roughly 18 people. So right now, I think there are 3 or 4 different chat boxes. So if you're hearing Gardner or myself speak to one, it might not be the one you're in. Please continue.
Okay. So that's I'm in the one that's called My Room, which makes me think of the great Beach Boys song, which is absolutely irrelevant, but why not? One of the things I have tried to distract myself with irrelevancies, since 12 to 15 hours a day of relevant stuff with the death of an organization is a little wearing. Let me speak, because this is not generally known and there's misinformation in My Room. And one of the things I can do is help to clarify misinformation. It's very difficult to do that, especially when people say things with great confidence that are incorrect, but I can try. And I hope people will do the same for me. The New Media Consortium has a corporate charter in California as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. corporation, in this case, the corporation called it's called New Media Centers, which is an historical artifact. We do business as the New Media Consortium. We have a board of directors. Now, I can see in my room that one of the persons in there, I believe it's Phil, says that the NMC's board is not a governing board, we're an advisory board. That's incorrect. Sorry to say it. We are a governing board. The people responsible for running the corporation is the board of directors. Typically, a board of directors will hire a chief executive officer, sometimes with that title, sometimes without that title. In this case, our former head of staff, chief executive officer, had the title executive director, and that was there was some thinking about that as well. But essentially, the board hires that person to manage the operations of the corporation. Since, as you can imagine, having, in the case of this board, 10 people who live all over the United States and have full-time jobs, will probably not be able to do an effective job of managing the operations of a corporation, nonprofit or for-profit. But legally, and in fact, the board of directors of the New Media Consortium is a governing board of directors. It's right there in the bylaws, and you can read anything you want about nonprofit corporations. There's a board of directors. We are not an advisory board. I will say there was, from time to time, confusion regarding that status. But if I can dispel that confusion, I would like to do so here. We were a governing board of directors. The executive director was hired by the board of directors to manage the operations and also to provide strategy and leadership for the corporation. And that's the way that's set up legally. Yeah.
Well, thank you for handling that. This is a funny technological thing. I can't switch rooms without falling off the stage. So I can't actually see that. So this is all very, very virtual, which is appropriate. Thank you for that detailed explication. Friends, we're almost out of time. What are your last thoughts about where this could go, where all these projects and all these people could go? I think we've had, if you want to join us on stage, click the join podium. Or if you want to put up another question like Phil did and everybody else, click the question mark. In my chat box, we had a pointer to a Slack group. So I should explain. A few of us set up a Slack group. If you don't know Slack, it's a productivity tool. It's basically a discussion board where you can have conversations. We have one called Beyond the Horizon. So if you'd like to join us to talk about this, please send me your email so we can do that. We almost had Sam Becker on the podium just now. She just tried to beam in. I'm not sure if she can do that. Sam's a dear friend, and I hope she can join us before we run out of time. Anthony Clemens asks, what structure do we want to adopt for this project, and how far would we like to take it? Which project in particular, Anthony? Good question. Sam, can we hear you? There she is! Oh, I hope she's not frozen. So much comes down to bandwidth. Can anybody else hear? This is always an issue. So much depends on bandwidth, like a wheelbarrow. Well, while Sam is trying to come in, we need a sound effect for her. Let's see. Sam! We can see you! With that, wonderful! How good to hear you.
Okay, I did press the podium button on accident, to be honest. So I'm really sorry about that. I don't know how that happened or what happened, but as long as I'm here, the best I can do is just thank everyone. I've had a chance to work with a lot of you, in this participant room here today. So it's just been an honor and a pleasure. And thank you, Brian, for hosting this. And it's been awesome to be in the Slack community. Thank you.
Great you could come. So glad you could come. Looking ahead, did you have anything that you wanted to envision? Did you have any, for all of these energies, all these projects, what would you like to see if you could?
Well, I think this is maybe just more of a general thought. There's, discussions about, the death, of an organization, and, no matter what your personal beliefs are, I have to think about the spirit of the organization living on in some capacity. And I would just encourage everyone to, we were talking about this at the beginning of the of this forum, to remember what you loved about the NMC, what made you feel warm and fuzzy about being a part of it, and just try and carry that same feeling and that, and the same characteristics forward in your everyday life, in your professional lives, in your personal lives. For me, it was the, I grew up at the NMC. I wrote a personal note to some folks. I joined the staff when I was just 25 years old, 7 years later, and so much has changed. But just the way that everyone made me feel welcome, and that my ideas were valid and my perspectives were valid. And you can go in on to any conversation and there might be someone from a university or a museum and a library and just people from all different backgrounds and walks of life coming together and having a conversation because they care deeply and passionately about learners and learning. And that's my takeaway. I'm always going to want to engage with new groups of people and, and learn from them and engage in lifelong learning. And so thank you.
Thank you, Sam. We love you, and we're so grateful for you coming today. We're also, I'm afraid, going to show deep ingratitude by saying we're out of time. If you would like to hang out for the next 5 minutes and just talk amongst yourselves, that would be fantastic. If you have to go, you have to go. Gardner, I want to thank you for being the responsible individual here. It feels like I'm talking about the adult in the room. Or about the designated driver, but I'm really glad you came.
Could I say one more thing, Brian, very quickly?
You say 2 more things.
So I understand that there are lots of questions I'm not able to answer, and that the impulse to tell stories or ask questions in ways that sometimes have some assumptions in them is not going to be satisfied by what I've said today. If I could encourage one thing for the community, for people who really care about the NMC, don't speculate. Don't make things up. Don't ask leading questions. No, do you still beat your wife? None of that stuff. Those are, at worst, disruptive to the process. At best, they cause a lot of pain for people who have things that they know and they can't talk about. So please, if I could ask one thing, no speculation. Don't make up stories. Your questions are valuable. They deserve to be answered, and they will be answered, hopefully one day, but not on demand, and not all of them right now. So I ask that sincerely from the bottom of my heart as somebody who cares deeply about this community and where we go from here. Thank you.
We appreciate that, and we really appreciate you saying you appreciate your time. Is not enough to say. We appreciate your coming here, given all that you're going through, and performing this unusual career twist of being a legal officer. Thank you very much, and I hope to hear from you soon. Good luck, Gardner. Now, for everybody here, moving forward, let me thank you all for this unusual meeting. I'm really, really glad that we were able to provide a forum for this kind of conversation. I'm glad that we had Gardner here who could represent the NMC in this process. I'm really, really glad we had 4 board members like Phil, staff members like Sam, and so many people who were involved in so many ways. I think this is a great way to honor what the NMC has done and a really fine first step for going beyond. We had a lot of questions, a lot of ideas in the chat, everything from new web content to carrying the spirit on to legal questions. I think the spirit will move. And I'm really glad that you were here to help that happen. If you want to know more about this, please contact me for the Slack group. It's called Beyond the Horizon. Send me your email address, and I can hook you up. Again, my email address is brian.alexander@gmail.com, or you can just go to my blog and contact page for that. Now, next week, which is also next year, because we've just run out of 2017. Next year, our first session for 2018, I'm really, really excited by an extraordinary individual. Chris Gilliard is a prof in Southeast Michigan at Macomb Community College who has coined the term digital redlining, and he has done groundbreaking research on that phrase. an important gentleman who's done great work in making us rethink social justice, equity, and education technology. Wonderful fellow. You can find him hypervisible on Twitter. I'm really looking forward to that next week, and you all should join us. Also coming up, as the new year comes to fruition, we have lots of other things happening, including I'm getting ready for a poll on the next book club reading. And if you'd like to learn more about the FTTE report, ftte.us will tell you. Shindig.com will tell you more about this technology. And let me just thank everybody, from the bottom of my heart, for a fantastic 2017. In the middle of so many stresses, pressures, and chaos, all of you have contributed your thoughts, your hearts, your humor, and your energy. And I'm just honored to have had the chance to be with you. I'm looking forward to being with you in 2018. Until then, see you next time. Bye-bye.